Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Man, look, I know last Thursday was pretty atrocious and vibes were really low, but typically as you get closer to a game and a game week, Mike, the fan base will sort of go through a healing and get themselves amped up and convince themselves why they're going to win the next week. What's it been like being around the team coming off the loss a week ago tonight?
Yeah, they didn't, the one thing is I don't think they sugarcoated anything. I mean, there were a few, hey, it's only 7 games and we're 3-4 and we're only 1 game out, but they know they're a team that's lost 4 of their last 5 and that they had to have serious conversations. So even though we didn't see anyone get fired, we didn't see anyone get really replaced in the starting lineup this week, they didn't try to pretend that they're not in a very critical stage. Now, the question is, where does that go? The stuff going on with Derek Carr and his receivers and Chris Olave in particular, and who's to blame, and a lot of public finger pointing, that's not good for a football team. But he said they kind of aired it out, put everything on the table, talked openly and honestly about everything they're dealing with. I'm not a huge silver lining in the last 2 games because they had over 400 yards in both of them, but that at least gives them some things they can be like, all right, why did this work? All right, let's do more of that. There's enough talent on this team to think they don't just need to scrap it all, but do they find those answers? I don't know. I think frustration grows with each week that they don't.
Yeah. Mike, you've covered the team for so long. One of the things that was so important in this organization with Sean was culture. And we saw them run veteran players and good players out of the building because they were a culture problem. I mean, we could run through the list going back to Dante Stallworth and Wayne Gandy and all the way up through the Jimmy Graham, Brandon Cooks, Kenny Stills, Junior Gillette. I mean, we all know the names. How do you sort of characterize where they are at culturally right now, Mike, where that was something that was so important for so long and it feels like that's eroding?
Yeah, I could say that's a fair topic to broach. I don't know where they are yet, but I feel like they're on the verge of that. I mean, Alvin Kamara is a truth teller, and he's doing the I'm just tired of losing. I've never lost at anything in my life. This isn't what we used to look like. I don't like the way it looks now. But I think he is a leading part of the solution. I think a lot of veterans are. I think Michael Thomas is. He's saying some hard truths, but he's addressing the team and saying, this isn't our standard. Work harder. Pay more attention to detail. So I don't think the veterans are checking out. I mean, I think there are some young players. I mean, obviously Trevor Penning had to be replaced from the lineup. Obviously, people have been having some tough conversations with Chris Olave, even though he's probably gotten a little too much of the blame. But I think young players who need to be, hold themselves to the same standard as the veterans. But I like the culture in the locker room, but I think if they're going to lose them, it's going to be losing them in the sense of, eroding the belief that this team is actually good. I think last year they came to the belief that the team, wasn't that good. This year they had such high hopes that this roster was loaded. They need evidence of that on the field, I think, to keep everybody on the right wavelength.
Our visits with Mike Triplett brought to you by Benny's Car Wash, bennyscarwash.com. Join today. You can wash for free for the rest of 2023, bennyscarwash.com. Next week, Mike, is the trade deadline, and we'll talk about the Colts here in a second, but do you anticipate the Saints to be buyers, sellers, or basically just bystanders?
Yeah, I think I'd be pretty surprised to see anything major in either direction because they're, same as in recent years, they're in this weird limbo where they think they should be able to win the NFC South this year, and that has not gone away. I mean, I guess if you lose 2 games real quick, or is it just one more game before the trade deadline? I can't imagine a place where they think, all right, look, we got to look to the future. There's no way that's happening this year, but at the same time, you go all in with a future draft pick move, just to fortify this year's roster, I think that would be kind of foolish to give up future draft capital at this point with the age of this team. So for that reason, I don't see anything major. But yeah, I mean, if you could do something like a mid-round pick to help fortify this offensive line, or maybe add another body on the defensive line, I wouldn't rule it out. I do think, especially if they win this week, I think it's still realistic to believe this team can win the NFC South this year, but I just wouldn't go overboard in investing in it.
Well, I mean, they're 3-4. I mean, of course, yeah. They're a game out of first in a bad division. Tampa could go lose tonight, and the Saints could win on Sunday, and then based on what Atlanta does, you're right back there. But Mike, it's the same conversation we had all the way last year through Week 17. Where you were,
it's slightly different. I mean, the difference between this year and last year is I like the ceiling of this team way more. I think last year's team, it was all about, well, maybe they can go 7-9, and 7-9 will win the division. I mean, this team should be better. I think that's what makes it more frustrating and more disappointing, and I think that's why more people are showing their frustrations and speaking out, because their potential is so much higher. And not realizing that potential is even more frustrating. But you can only say that for so long. I think we've kind of reached a point where you can't lose to Indianapolis and Chicago and keep talking about the potential of this team.
That's fair. When you were with us last week, a hat tip to you. You correctly predicted what the Saints were going to do on the offensive line, with Cameron Irving playing at right tackle and Andrews Pete playing at left tackle. So hat tip to you. Look into your crystal ball. What do they do this weekend in Indy?
Well, James Hurst isn't practicing this week, so Ryan Ramczyk is. So, I mean, the easy prediction is Andrews Pete stays at left tackle, and Ryan Ramczyk stays at right tackle. I don't think they're in a hurry to change what they're doing with Trevor Penning. I mean, if they didn't install Trevor Penning back in the lineup last week, they're not going to do it as they get healthier. They really want him to take a step back, and they're thinking long term with him, I think. Now, Max Garcia left practice today with an illness. Illness is going around on this team. It's going around in our media corps. It's going around in my car where my son is sitting next to me right now. It's going around the entire city of New Orleans. But if they have everyone available, I think the real interesting thing is, what do you do when James Hurst is back healthy if Andrews Pete looks good at left tackle? Because he probably played the best game at left tackle of anyone yet this season.
That is a telling incrimination of this team if Andrews Pete's your best option at left tackle. Though he has been a spot starter there and a rotational player at left tackle when they've had injuries and stuff in the past, so he's done it. He's done it before. When you look specifically this matchup, Mike, Indy is a team that defensively is not very good. They're 30th in the league in points allowed. Is this a game where we should expect the New Orleans Saints to be able to go on the road and score a lot of points against that defense?
Should and expect are big words, man. Could and maybe. Can we temper it a little bit?
I don't like that. I don't want to temper. I want points.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to be glasses half empty, they've found some elements of offense the last couple of weeks. I think in general, once the offensive line stopped imploding, there's been elements of better offense. Now, they've still got major issues, getting the quarterback and the receivers on the same page, play calling in the red zone, Derek Carr making the right decisions. I mean, there's a lot of things that make this offense far from perfect, but they've still got all their running backs, all their receivers, most of their offensive line, and just tireless, probably, poring over ideas and solutions that may or may not be there, trying to figure out what's going to work for this offense. So I think the fact that we did see 15 points and damn near should have seen 22 points in the fourth quarter last week is something to build on, at least.
He's on Twitter at Mike Triplett, neworleans.football. On the other side of the ball, the Saints defense is going to face the Indy offense, which is sixth in the league in scoring. I mean, and the weird thing, Mike, is, Jonathan Taylor is back now and looked really good last weekend. But Pittman's a good receiver, but it's not like they have like a true legit.
And Minshew at quarterback,
No, go ahead.
It feels like they've gotten in a lot of weird games. I mean, like, I did not expect 32-31 against Cleveland or whatever was going on last week. So the points on both, yards on both sides of the ball, like I wouldn't be surprised at all if it's just not that type of game. But I think the one real threat that Indy does possess is a run game. I mean, they were doing it with Zach Moss. They're doing it with Jonathan Taylor back. They can run block. I think it'll be the Saints' biggest test. Saints have a really good run defense. They've had really good results as a run defense, but they haven't necessarily been tested by the top rushing offenses in the league, and Travis Etienne had some success against them. So I think they're going to need to prove that they can stop the run against a team that really is dedicated to sticking with it.
Yeah. Zach Moss is second in the NFL in rushing yards behind Christian McCaffrey, and that's before Jonathan Taylor comes back. So now you've got Taylor and Moss. I know Moss has been injured this week, but I think he practiced today. So if he's available, I mean, you're talking about a pretty formidable tandem there with those two guys running at the Saints defense. Mike, I mean, I can ask you, like, what's the keys for the Saints in this game in particular? I mean, it feels kind of obvious, but if you had to sort of bullet point it, how do you think it would go Sunday?
I mean, boy, I think you have to take advantage of this schedule that keeps presenting you with these opportunities. I almost think being on the road is good for this team because the Superdome crowd is so eager to turn on them when things aren't going well. I think that's a pressurized atmosphere. With all the time they've had to prepare for this game, I really feel like this is the get right game they need. I don't think it's going to be 34-0 at New England. I think they'll take 20-19 if they can get away with it. But I mean, it's just got to be a cleaner offensive performance. It's got to be Derek Carr making decisions and maybe simplifying. By simplifying the playbook, I don't mean only run 6 things, but only run things that your receivers are going to run well and that there's not going to be any confusion and too much nuance for them. I mean, we saw them thrive in the 2-minute hurry-up offense. It doesn't mean you have to run hurry-up the whole time, but I think that should be a pretty big light bulb moment that when the plan was scaled down to the kind of things you can do in a 2-minute offense, they look better than ever. So at least start there, I think, and show us a clean offensive performance for crying out loud.
They're not miracle workers, Mike. I mean, Mike Triplett on Twitter at Mike Triplett. neworleans.football. Our chat's every Thursday, brought to you by Benny's Car Wash. Man, we appreciate it. Safe travels up to Indy. We'll look forward to talking next week.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.